Now the last devotional I did, I told you that there was an old store that was on the property on the other end. Well, this is the other end. My great-grandmother's house sat right here. Her store sat right here. These are the foundations for the grist mills that were behind it that was like the one over there. This is the pad for the engines that drove the grist mills. These are the trees that grew up since the store has been gone. As you can see, the trees even have come and gone. And these azaleas have grown in its place. This was the edge of the porch coming up. As you can see, the azaleas are, well, they're kind of getting redirected a little bit. They've kind of grown out of their way, and they're getting redirected. You can see the, right down there on the other side, you can see the footer for the foundation for the porch, and this met the needs of everyone around for quite some time, until of course the store was closed due to either people moving on or the Depression, and after that, just for whatever reason, it closed. Just like everything comes and goes, everything has a season. And you might say that if somebody asked you, who was it that crucified Jesus? Some will tell you the Romans did. They surely were the instrument. They surely carried it out. Some might say the Jews did because they offered up Christ for sacrifice. They just didn't know why. But they offered him up for death. And so, yes, they had a hand in it. But if you really want to know the honest truth, each and every one of us, and each and every one that will ever be, and ever has been, is responsible for Christ's death on earth, this human body. I just want to let you know a little bit about that. We talk about the crucifixion. So let's be a little bit more honest about it. They beat Christ when they arrested him. And then they beat him again. And then they took a cat o' nine tails, a whip. And if you're not aware of what the cat o' nine tails are, obviously it's a whip with several leather straps, or either from anywhere from a foot to 2 feet long, that have glass, bone, and jagged metal that is attached to all along these strips, each individual one. And it has a lead ball on the end. And that lead ball was meant so that when they struck Jesus with that, the lead ball would dig in and wrap around, so that each sharp object that was on those straps would dig in, and when he pulled them back, it would tear flesh. And they did that 39 times or more. So his back, which also meant probably the back of his neck, his arms, his legs, they all were just basically ripped to shreds. And then in order to cause more pain, they packed salt in these wounds. Very painful, but they also started a healing process that probably allowed Christ to endure the rest, because they beat him some more. They beat him to almost unrecognizable, and then they took thorns. If any of you have ever know what a mock orange is, or ever seen an orange tree, you'll know that they have very long thorns. And they took and made a crown of thorns, which I do on occasion. I make crowns and I give them to people so that they remember. And they cut themselves probably doing it, because they are razors, they're like needles. And they drove this. They didn't place it. It says they drove this crown onto his head and into his head. Now you have some nerve endings right about here, along that temple. If they are pierced, or if they're hit or injured in any way, it causes excruciating pain that can be felt throughout the whole body. It also makes you almost impossible to function. But they drove this on his head. Then they gave him the cross member of the instrument of his death. They took this large cross member of a cross, and they strapped it to his back. And as they were marching him, it wasn't a little march. It wasn't like a walk from your living room to your kitchen or anything like that. It was quite a ways that they marched him through these streets, while people threw things at him, pelted him, hit him along the way. And at one point, his body actually had about as much as it could take, strength-wise. And he fell to his knees. And they picked a man out of the crowd to pick up that cross and carry him the rest of the way. Then they took nails. You know the story. They drove it through him. They drove it through his feet. They drove it through his hands. But as we know, the hands went from the wrist to the tip of the fingertip. But they drove that through his hands. And in order for Christ to breathe, he had to push up on the nails of his feet. He had to push his feet up, because if he didn't, then it cut off his ability to breathe. And he suffered. And for most, if they wanted to make sure, to end it or make sure they were dead, they would break their legs so that they couldn't push up and hold themselves. It was gruesome, to say the least. But Christ passed away before they broke his legs, and so they stuck a spear in his side to just make sure he was dead. And one of the clear signs that the person's not living any longer is that the blood starts to separate. And what they call water, we call plasma, but you could see the water ran out before the blood did, so they knew he was passed on. Now, I bring this up because all too often we just use the word crucified. And we know in our mind that's painful and it's uncomfortable for us to think about. But we really need to know that we put Christ's body through about as much as the body can be put through, and then some. And as we all know, he passed away. His body passed away. He took on our sins. And then he was risen joyfully. That was Christ. That was the man part of Christ's sole purpose for coming to earth, was to pay for our sins. Now, as I said before, you can blame the Romans for actually driving the nails in his hand. Or you can blame the Jews for giving him up to die. But you really want to know the truth? Each and every one of us drove those nails in his hands. Each and every one of us is responsible. Now, we won't talk about the sins that you've asked for forgiveness for, because those sins have been forgiven by God. The only way they can live on now is for us to keep them in our memory, for us not to forgive ourselves. But those sins are done and gone. The sins I want to talk about are the sins that we commit every day and will commit for the rest of our lives, even if they're maybe a small little white lie that we told because we didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or we didn't want to get in trouble, so we told a sin, or maybe we got really angry because we felt somebody was doing something against us. This world today, right now, there's a lot of anger because people feel like they can't do anything about it. I'm not talking about like one sin or another, all sins. We all sin and come short of the glory of God. I sin. I will sin today probably. I will sin tomorrow. And as much as I don't want to, I'm a man, a human, mankind. And God tells us we'll sin. But we're supposed to strive not to sin. We're supposed to try to learn how to live in His presence. Because if you want to know the truth, when we pass away and we go to heaven, we're going to someone else's house. If we go to Mexico or Italy or any other country where they speak a foreign language, and we know we're going to be there a while, don't we prepare? Don't we learn how to speak their language, learn their customs, learn how to be in their presence? Well, same as for God's house. We have a lot of learning how to be in His presence to do, because there is no sin in God's house. In fact, He tells you He cannot be in the presence of sin. So as mankind, it is our nature to sin. So we have to rise above our nature. And the only way we could have done that and do that still was that Christ's sacrifice of His earthly body and all the pain and suffering. That's the only way. And He created that foundation for us. And it's a foundation we have to build on so we can learn how to be in His presence. You know, your parents give you a foundation. They give you your foundation of how to live, how to act. Maybe they'll give you a home to live in when they're gone. We need to remember that the foundation God gave us was for us, and it was called grace. We need to pass that grace on. Just a few things to think about. I just want to say thank you. And pretty soon you'll be able to see these better. Y'all have a blessed day, blessed week. Love each other. Have a great week.